Our first reading comes from the prophet Isaiah, chapter 2, verses 1 through 5. The word that Isaiah, son of Amos, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. In the days to come, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the highest of the mountains, and shall be raised above the hills. All the nations shall stream to it. Many peoples shall come and say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways and we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth instruction, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between the nations, and shall arbitrate for many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, and neither shall they learn war anymore. O house of Jacob, come, let us walk in the light of the Lord."
And our second reading this morning will be from Matthew chapter 24, verses 36 through 44. "But about that day and hour no one knows, neither the angels of heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. For as the days of Noah were, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing until the flood came and swept them all away. So too will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then two will be in the field, one will be taken, and one will be left. Two women will be grinding meal together, one will be taken, and one will be left. Keep awake, therefore, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect." This is the word of God for us, the people of God. Thanks be to God. You may be seated.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Seriously, are you ready? This is a question that gets asked a lot this time of year. And often this question can bring on a bit of anxiety, right? Because there are so many things to get ready for during the holidays. Are you ready for the gift exchange? Better get on your shopping. Are you ready to host company? Gotta tidy up the house and start decorating. Are you ready for the big dinner? Grocery shopping, holiday baking. Are you ready? December is full of readying ourselves for company, for traveling, hosting, celebrating, gift giving, and more. But Advent, on the other hand, is a season of waiting, preparing, and hoping for Jesus' birth. This season starts out our new year and leads us to Christmas. Advent calls us to a spiritual season of slowness, intentionality, and preparation that does in fact look different than the busyness of preparation for the holidays. I wonder, what comes to your mind when you think of Advent? What are the symbols or images, traditions, or stories that you associate with Advent? Maybe you think of the pink and blue nativity candles. In my mind, I think of pink and purple because that's what I was raised with. That's actually what I wrote down until I looked here and saw that they were blue. Maybe you picture cozy nativity scenes or festive Christmas trees, candles, Hallmark cards donning phrases like joy to the world and good tidings. Maybe you have an Advent calendar at home full of goodies like little pieces of chocolate or little trinkets to help you build anticipation for Christmas. What about a thief prowling outside your house stealthily and silent, waiting for just the right moment when you let your guard down to strike, pick your lock, or break a window? Does this seem very Advent-y? one of these is not quite like the other. This image of a thief doesn't really give us that warm and fuzzy Advent feeling we come to know through tradition and through a sense of sentimentalism. And yet, this is the image our gospel reading for this first Sunday of Advent gives us. A homeowner caught off guard, a house that's broken into, for the Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour like a thief in the night. There's really no way around this, right? This image feels more dreadful than hopeful. This is disturbing, terrifying to many of us even. This description of Jesus feels so unfamiliar from the peace, love, forgiveness, sweet baby Jesus we think about during the holidays. The Jesus here in Matthew's apocalyptic passage is no respecter of boundaries, our status quo, or keeping us comfortable. The Jesus Matthew is describing is an invader, an intruder, disruptor, someone who we would deem criminal. But isn't it true that when we start to build a relationship with Jesus, that we will change? That when you do so, you are opening yourself up to being transformed by God's grace to be made anew? Sometimes this change is welcome, right? Improvements, growing in spiritual strength. But other times it may feel like Jesus is inside of your heart doing major construction, tearing down walls that we build up, convicting us, making us vulnerable in new ways to seeing the suffering of others, calling us out of our comfort zone, making us new, making us more like him. Yet we are told to be alert, be ready, prepare. Unlike preparing for a break-in, we are not locking the doors on our hearts. We're not batting down the hatches. Instead, we're making room for this Jesus, the baby who will flip tables and change the world in unexpected ways. In fact, our Old Testament passage for today, we are told that when Jesus returns, we will put away our swords and lay our weapons down. Our reading from Isaiah actually reminds me of one of my other favorite parts of Advent, Hallmark Christmas movies. I love watching a good Hallmark movie. Yes, they are cheesy. Yes, they are predictable, but they are the picture-perfect story of a big city executive traveling to a small town only to fall in love with a local person in a snowy holiday landscape over hot cocoa and gift exchanges, filling me with joy, hope, and love. It's so fun and festive. But this is how Isaiah's prophecy must have sounded. Almost too good to be true. When the Lord comes, we will all be drawn to the mountaintops, Isaiah says. Nations will be streaming together. They will be at peace. People will gather to worship together. Isaiah then paints a robust vision of the kingdom of God on earth that is real and tangible, that is full of diversity and inclusivity. So much so that we will no longer need our swords or war or fighting. These protections become so obsolete that they can be repurposed into something more useful to contribute to the whole of society. Now imagine how this must have sounded to the earliest people to have received this prophecy. This prophecy must seem so unlikely to the Hebrew people. When nations came to Israel, they came to invade, to conquer, to oppress. Nations came to destroy, to tear down the temple. So imagine how incredible this vision of nations streaming to Israel, not for destruction, not for personal or political gain, but for peace, for sanctuary, for worship. How would that have sounded? Almost as realistic as one of those cheesy Hallmark movies. This is echoed in the writings of Paul later, that God will draw all people to himself. And this, my friends, is something we have to hope for this Advent season. Now, the lectionary gave us these two seemingly unfestive passages for the first Sunday of Advent, and we will be reading through Isaiah and Matthew throughout this season. But I think many of you are ready for the sugar plums and the Christmas trees, the nativity scenes. But these passages, they leave us wondering, where are the angels? Where's Mary? Where's Joseph? Where's the manger? But a few things are made clear between this pairing of scriptures. Jesus is coming. With Jesus, everything will change. Which raises the question, are we ready? Of course, during Advent, we are preparing for the birth of the little baby Jesus. This Jesus, as he lays in our nativity scenes, seems so pure, innocent, fairly palatable. We almost always feel ready to receive this Jesus because baby Jesus appears as a hopeful gift, a promise. But these passages point towards Jesus' second coming, something we don't often talk about, something that seems much more difficult to prepare for, something far more mysterious than we can even understand. I feel like we forget that Jesus' birth also poses such a mystery. Just as Jesus' second coming will change everything, so did Jesus' birth. Are you ready? In divinity school, I learned very early on that graduate school was harder than I thought it would be. I would say to my friends in moments of stress, I'm just counting on the second coming. If Jesus comes before the end of the school year, I don't have to finish, and I can still stand before God and say, I was faithful to the call. I really did say things like this. And as I tell you this story, we chuckle and we laugh. You might be wondering, is she serious? And it seems unlikely, the second coming, right? It feels far away. We laugh, foolish Grayson. And yet we are reminded that no one knows the day or the hour, so we must be ready at any time. What would it be like to live into this genuine anticipation? How might you live differently? How would you prepare? Are you ready? Advent reminds us that we are waiting in the darkness for the light of Christ to be born into the world. Jesus gives us something to hope for. It's so easy to see how the world is still shaded in darkness. That's part of what makes this passage from Isaiah feel so hallmarky, so unbelievable, almost unrealistic. We hear this and we think, seriously? Is this even possible? Because it's so different from the world we see around us. To hear this good news of a time when nations come together and worship rather than war. People of all kinds, all languages, all cultures living at peace with each other and before God. We might struggle to imagine it, and yet still we are told to expect it, to hope for it, and to get ready for it. It amazes me that even today, these words of Isaiah are still something we can hope for. It's so clear how the world is not yet as it should be. You don't need me to give examples, but I feel compelled to speak truth in the darkness. In the United States, we had 7 mass shootings in 7 days last week. There is war in Ukraine. There are oppressions near and far. A young girl was killed in Raleigh in a tragic accident. And this isn't to mention the ways we personally feel darkness in our hearts this season. There is so much darkness, yet we are told to hope this Advent season. That Christ is coming, that we will one day beat our swords into plowshares. We will one day be unified but not uniform as we celebrate diversity, inclusion, and justice. Knowing that in order for justice to reign, we may feel at times that Jesus, the thief, is sneaking up on us, doing work in us, transforming us, preparing us, and readying us, calling us to live differently than the rest of the world. But I know what many of you are thinking. This message of hope and prophecy, it doesn't change our current circumstances. Hearing that one day God will bring this change doesn't help the oppressed or the hungry or those affected by gun violence or those caught in war or famine. It doesn't help the people that are suffering today. But we need to be reminded, you must be ready for the Son of Man who is coming at an hour you do not expect. Stay awake, stay vigilant. This Advent, we are preparing to welcome Jesus in a real way, the baby Jesus who we believe will change everything in due time. We must hold tight to this hope and choose to walk in the light. So how are we walking in the light that Isaiah speaks of? How are we preparing ourselves this Advent? We are reminded that we are not merely people of hope, but people of action. We partner with God to bring about God's kingdom to earth for the least of these. Matthew warns, do not be asleep. In other words, do not be passive in hope. Do not be blind to injustice. Do not get too comfortable with the status quo, for Jesus is coming and it's all about to change. Instead, may Christ's coming inspire us to act out of hope and deep faith for what is coming. Might you ready yourself through prayer for the world and its brokenness. Might you seek ways to celebrate diversity. Might you choose to not be asleep to injustice, discrimination, gun violence, racism. Might you choose to seek the ways God is making something new in your life or in the life of another. Might you choose to give generously to missions or ministries that seek to bring about this hopeful prophecy in its own way until Christ comes again. Might you prepare your heart by working and investing on your relationship with Christ. But friends, might you hope? Might you choose to walk in the light? So again, I ask, are you ready?